Hi everyone, welcome to week 4 of Parenting Inside Out. This week we're going to be focusing on child development. Before we jump in, let's take a moment and identify how we're feeling. You can refer to the feelings worksheet in your yellow workbook and jot down on a piece of paper how you're feeling and what might be causing you to feel that way. If you would like, you can also use this time to review our emotion regulation video or practice another emotion regulation strategy of your own. After you're finished with that, let's go ahead and jump into our takeaway messages for today's lesson. This week, we're going to be focusing on child and brain development. And for the first part of this lesson, some takeaway messages include: the behavior of our children is due to many factors, including their biology and the way they're raised. Providing encouragement to a child is essential to support their development. For every developmental job a child has, his parent has a parent job to do to support the child's job. As always, we're going to take this time to transfer our takeaway messages into a learning goal. Some sample learning goals for this part of the lesson include: I'd like to understand what I can do to support my children as they are working on their developmental jobs. And I'd like to have a better understanding of why developmental jobs are so important. You can now take this time to open up your purple workbook and fill out a learning goal for today. In the first part of this lesson, we will discuss some definitions surrounding human development, why growing up jobs are so important, and how we can support our children in their growing up jobs. You can now open your yellow workbook to page 4.1.1, titled Definitions Used in Human Development. I'm going to briefly go over each of these terms and discuss their definitions. You can follow along and highlight anything that you find important or helpful. Number 1, development. Development is defined as a way to describe growing up by growing from a less mature form to a more mature form. Number 2, child development. This is defined as a way to describe how a child becomes able to do more complex things as they get older. 3, developmental milestones. You've probably heard this before when your kids were babies and they were starting to do things like crawling and walking. This is defined as a set of age-specific tasks that most children can do in a certain age range. Although each milestone has an average age level, the actual age when a typically developing child reaches that milestone can vary quite a lot. Developmental stages is defined as a way to describe the progress and changes of the age-specific tasks that most children do in a certain age range. Number 5, developmentally delayed. This is defined as a way to describe when a child does not reach their developmental milestones at the expected times. Developmental delay means that a child has an ongoing major delay in their development. Delay can happen in one or more areas, such as motor, language, social, or thinking skills. Number 6, developmentally disabled. This can be defined as a way to describe children who stop going through developmental stages altogether. Their bodies keep growing, but cognitively and socially they stop developing. You can come back to this reference page as often as you'd like if you need any refreshers on the definitions of these different terms. The next page that you're going to turn to is also in your yellow workbook on page 4.1.2. It's titled Growing Up. Take a second to pause the video and read through this page on your own. Now that you've done that, we're now going to dig a little bit deeper into each of these topics. Number 1, growing up happens in stages. People tend to go through the same stages in the same order, with some predictable behaviors and reasons for those behaviors. That's why two different parents of two different 2-year-olds can have a good laugh or a good cry about whatever they're both going through. This can be really beneficial for parents as we're raising young kids and you have a play date with another family and your kids just happen to be having the same struggle or going through the same victory at the same time. The fact that most kids fall in line with these developmental stages can be really beneficial to help bonding between parents and to just relate on that level. Number 2, children do certain behaviors to get their growing up jobs done. Your job as a parent is to figure out what your child's job is. It's important for you to understand exactly what your child is capable at each stage of development. We're going to dig a lot deeper in the second video in this series about what each child job is at each different developmental stage. Something to remember is that there's a tendency for parents to overestimate the cognitive ability of their children. This is really common when parents might not see their children very much. It's really common to think that they're older than they actually are. This might be because kids tend to grow if you don't see them for a while, and so you think, oh, my child's really tall. In my mind, I view them as older than they actually are, so I hold them to higher expectations than maybe they're ready for. It can also be common because if we don't see our children often, there's just kind of a distance there, and we are out of touch a little bit with maybe how old they are or what they're developmentally capable of. This can cause inappropriate expectations, pressure, and even harshness and discipline of the child. The great thing is that we're able to correct this, and we're able to teach ourselves and remind ourselves where our kids are at developmentally in order to respond to them in the most appropriate way. Number 3, parents have a job to do for every job their child has. Just like a mechanic needs tools, resources, and knowledge to do their job, children need the tools, resources, and support parents provide to do their job. The job of the parent is to know what developmental tasks children are working on so they can hold appropriate expectations of the child's cognitive abilities and maturity level. They can then provide love, discipline, and training to support the child in accomplishing their developmental task. Number 4, a parent's job can look like love, giving encouragements, or guidance. We're going to talk a little bit later in this lesson about some really helpful ways that you can give encouragements to your child at each specific stage. Number 5, when parents don't do their parent job, the children's friends can take over. Because adults play such a key role in shaping the development of the child, when they abandon their role and neglect their children, children's peers will pick up the task of influencing them. If there is a lack of a parent guiding a child in a certain area, whatever other kids or people are around your child, they're going to fill in that gap, and it's going to be really common for your kids to kind of take on the roles of those people around them. When parents don't do their job, children don't develop the skills they need to be healthy, safe, and socially adept adults. Number 6, some children experience delays in growing up, and they are behind in reaching milestones like walking or talking. Some children have health problems that keep them from accomplishing all their developmental tasks. Other children lack opportunities within their environment for accomplishing developmental tasks. And lastly, number 7, some children are developmentally disabled and may never reach some growing up milestones. It's important to remember, too, that while there are all of these different stages, each child is an individual, and they're going to meet their milestones at a time that's appropriate for them. As parents, we can guide them and direct them and help them and support them in that whole process, but each child is going to meet their milestones when it's right for them. The next thing we're going to look at is Worksheet 4.1.3 in your yellow workbook. What I want you to do is take a second and look at each of the different stages that are located on the gray hearts on the side of this page. Take a second and highlight or circle which stage you find your children in at this time. Now that you've done that, we're going to go through and highlight some of these developmental encouragements together. For example, if we start at birth to 6 months, which is also known as stage 1, that's the being stage. If your child is in this stage, one thing that you can think about saying to them are things like, you belong here, or what you need is important to me. There's ways of showing these things and actually verbally saying these things to them. Some of these other things in this bolded list right here are important things to remember that your child needs to feel supported in and things they need to hear when they're between ages 0 and 6 months. Number 2 is the doing stage, which is 6 to 18 months. Some encouragements that they would like to experience or hear or that they need during this stage include telling them, you can explore and experiment and I will support and protect you. And you can use all of your senses when you explore. Number 3 is the thinking stage. This is 18 months to 3 years. Some encouragements for this stage include, I'm glad you're starting to think for yourself, and it's okay for you to be angry, and I won't let you hurt yourself or others. Number 4 is the identity and power stage. During this stage, which is 3 to 6 years, the following are things that could be really beneficial for your child to hear, such as you can explore who you are and find out who other people are, and you can be powerful and ask for help at the same time. Number 5, which is 6 to 12 years and is known as the structure stage, includes the following encouragements. You can think before you say yes or no and learn from your mistakes. You can trust your intuition and help you decide what to do. Number 6 is the identity, sexuality, and separation stage. Some encouragements for this stage include, you can know who you are and learn and practice skills for independence. And you can learn the difference between sex and nurturing and be responsible for your needs and behavior. Lastly, we've included an adult stage, which is known as interdependence. Some encouragements that are appropriate for adults could be, your needs are important, and you can be uniquely yourself and honor the uniqueness of others. What I'd like you to do now is go back and find which stage your children fall into and highlight a couple of those encouragements that you might want to model to your kids, or even write a statement that you might want to say to your kids to help encourage them in the stage that they're in. You can pause the video to take a minute to do that. In the next video, Samantha will be discussing in more detail each stage of development as well as critical periods of brain development. This would now be a great time to go add more to your learning goal that you started at the beginning of this lesson. You can answer the 2 follow-up questions in regards to what your goal was, writing down what you learned in the lesson to help you reach that goal and what's an action step or something that you'd like to try in the future surrounding that goal. As always, there will be another opportunity for a learning goal in the second set of videos.